I suppose the first one I would have to say, especially when I started my own, I did a storytelling residency for a couple of years in Donegal Town in the Old Castle Bar. And the first thing that comes to mind to share is learn your stories off by heart. Unless you're Tommy Tiernan. You know, learn your stories off by heart. Sentence by sentence, like in a theatre play.
It just ensures that you've got a proper flow, that you have a confidence, which I think is straight away is what everyone needs. So
absolutely, which is tip 2. That was it. In order to get confidence is if you can learn it. And it was tip 3 then for me would be get somebody. This is Mara Logues. I would never have come to this myself. Get somebody to introduce you. Even if it's the pub, even if it's the guy behind the bar. Moving on to tip 4. Don't utter a single word until you've got your audience attention. The 5th one, tip number 5, would be just your name. Very quickly, often just who you are and what story you're going to tell. So tip number 6, project your voice, but don't shout. Project your voice, but don't shout. I learned that, again, it can be out of nervousness. And as you know, sometimes the Northern accent, even the Donegal, which is probably the softer version of it, it can be quite loud. Tip 7, this is important as well. And again, this is one from Mara Logue. Make eye contact. Make eye contact with your audience. And if possible, I know this is not easy. Sometimes in confined spaces, you'll have to sit to tell a story. But if you can stand up, I find it's good because you kind of the energy flows a little bit more, you know, especially if you're a little bit nervous and it's a new audience. So I would say, and the other thing is kind of move around. Yeah, this is one of my own that I kind of learned through the storytelling residencies. I think it's good to start with a short story. A short, funny story. I call them the icebreakers. The second final tip I would like to share is try and change the tone of your voice. You know, it can be like, for example, if you want to tell like a ghost story or something, you'll suddenly start, you know, maybe looking around you like that. I'm talking a bit slower. That you went to this house in the middle of the night. The door creaked open, you know. Again, this is all about knowing your story as well. When you know your story more, you can kind of change your pitch of voice and stuff as well. And again, I'm learning all the time about this, you know. I was very lucky to have that storytelling residency because it was almost like a 3 months constant out 2-3 nights a week. And I found it was basically thrown into the deep end. And last but not least, and there was a guy, I was told this by a guy called Duke Stroud. Duke Stroud used to appear in a lot of Westerns. In fact, he appeared, you might be able to get his character. He appeared in Top Gun. He was the officer on board the ship that was always shouting to the guys when they were doing crazy maneuvers on Tom Cruise and his partner. And I was telling a ghost story. It's a famous ghost story from Barnasmore Gap. So he was listening, and in fairness, I'm so glad he didn't mention who he was before I started, or I probably wouldn't have been able to do it with nerves. But he came up to me afterwards and he said, you know, that story about the Phantom Hitchhiker, he said, that's a really good story. But he said, when you finish the story, he says, you quickly finish, say if it's a cliffhanger or a thrilling story, because I was finishing with, and there he was sitting in the back seat of the car, staring at her. And you see as the story goes, and he goes, don't say anything after that. That's your punchline to finish the story. And that was only kind of like, I suppose, a nervous habit that I felt I had to compensate. that's where your silence comes in as well. There, John, I know you mentioned it to me. One of Rab's key points: use silence as well. Don't be afraid just to cut the story, especially if you want to create a bit of a thrill or a suspense in your audience.
Well, I hope I got a suitable silence there before I said bravo, sir, bravo. That's beautiful. You know, it's a very binary thing, storytelling, because basically you're talking or you've got silence. And you're absolutely right. We need to be focusing on the other tool from that very small box and use it well, especially when there's something scary or there's something poignant. And, you know, there's a time for the laughter and let the silence be extinguished, but you're absolutely right. So he was making an awful lot of sense. I think that line was, your ego's writing checks your body can't cash. That was it. And, you know, again, one of the killer lines. He did people realize by the end of the night who he was, or was it it was all about you and he was taken out the back and removed?
No, it didn't. People, you know, a guy like that, there was no real ego with him. It was just that I was introduced to him, but it's through his party, and he just very kindly, you know, from looking, because he trains actors now. That's his role, and I just thought it was very kind of him to just share his thoughts of when I was up doing storytelling. Everybody has their own style, and I think there's only one way I would give a final piece of advice to people. The only way you'll find it out is by start telling stories.